Okay, let me read this out to you. It says, freedom and responsibility are in a never-ending dance, and life is only possible in the tension between such opposites. Conflict and war make us fertile in the same way nature's struggle of life, death, and rebirth makes the soil fertile. This is the eternal battle. It is a cosmic war raging across the entire universe. It has and always will endure, and despite the fact that we cannot change it, we each play our part in the grand game. It's in our DNA. Nature literally seeks to prosecute life through us. Consider the battle for biological human life. There are hundreds of millions of sperm fighting for the chance just to reach the female egg, only to be faced with the enormous task of fertilizing it successfully, following which the DNA of your mother and father have to match, fuse, and unite to miraculously become you, the living, breathing, thinking being that is sitting here reading this now. This competition was won for the territory of existence, in which there was one winner and many losers over many iterations. You are literally the product of a successful territorial conquest, the sperm who claimed the egg and thus changed the destiny of both progenitors. I
I
get
love
into this
that.
whole, thank you.
I
I
love
get
that.
into this whole like deep dive on like what is the essence of war and struggle and battle. Like it's literally in us. It is a part of like who and what we are, and like trying to ignore it and imagine that we can have fucking peace internal, it doesn't work. Like we need to have a healthier relationship with conflict, with struggle, with war, with battle, with all of this sort of stuff. So that's part of what the new book is going to focus on. And then there's this like section about beauty, and there's like sort of 4 or 5 pages in there which talk about like how beauty beauty is this sort of like transcendent quality. And I want to find a nice little passage from that to kind of to break this down. So let's start with the quote that I open up the chapter with. It says, "If you crush a cockroach, you're a hero. If you crush a butterfly, you're a villain. Morals have aesthetic standards." And that is attributed to Nietzsche, but I'm not sure if he ever said that or not. I haven't been able to find the citing of that work, but it sounds like a very Nietzschean thing to say. So I then follow this with, of Nietzsche's many profound aphorisms, this is one of my favorite because it cuts right to a deep, visceral truth that few want to admit intellectually, despite agreeing with intuitively. So the beauty of his statement, pun intended, is that the rationalist will argue with it, the equalitarian and Democrat will be offended, the moralist will tell you it's unethical, the theologian will say it's wrong, the hippie will tell you it's cruel, the materialist or the atheist will disagree on subjective grounds. In fact, all of your modern, sensible, civilized conditioning will try to tell you it's unfair. But when push comes to shove, you will step on the cockroach and praise the person who does, while you are very unlikely to do the same to a butterfly. And if you did see someone crush a butterfly, you would be immediately, intuitively enraged by it. You might not say anything, but you will feel the anger, and that is precisely why it matters. Visceral reactions like this reveal the deepest truths. They go beyond the intellect and our rational psyche. They are physio-psychologically true and reside deep in our subconscious. These are instincts developed over thousands of years of human experience. The lessons learned and the heuristics developed across generations become the intuition we store in our blood, our bones, and our bodies, none of which can lie. Beauty transcends dimension. It is found in the material and the metaphysical, the poor and the rich, the small and the large, the young and the old, the perfect and the imperfect. Beauty is simultaneously objective and subjective. So that's kind of like the opening section to
I
that
dig
beauty thing.
I dig that too, man. I'm stoked for this to come out. I mean, so because I think that's such a great example to start with there. That idea, like we all, again, the rationalist will say like, well, no, they're both insects, so really, they should be treated. But like, if you are being honest with yourself and how you feel, like, yeah, if I saw somebody out there crush a butterfly, I'd be like, you sick son of a bitch. What
Yeah,
is
you're a
wrong
dick.
with you? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you do that to a beautiful creature of the sky? Then you see somebody do that to a cockroach and you're like, thank God you got that disgusting thing
I know.
out of here. Like, phew, good on you, man. I'll buy you a beer. Like, really appreciate it. Like, we all know this. And yet, like, that maybe that's kind of like, do you think that that's what have we in some way taken that example and blown it out to the whole culture as it relates to human beings? Is that kind of what you see as having happened?
100%, man. You got these like dumb fucking kids out there throwing paint and shit like that on on these beautiful sculptures and statues and stuff like that, and people like trying to pull down statues of the people who came and like built civilization, everything like that, and then they're like making artwork of like fat blobs and whatever that other stupidity they're making these days. It's like completely like it's a revolt against the beautiful, and it's disgusting. It's like it's elevating the ugly and de-elevating or denigrating the beauty and the beautiful, and that also comes from, what was the word we spoke about earlier? Envy. It comes from the same fucking place, and this is why coming back to our last conversation, the opposite of communism is not capitalism, it is beauty. Because communism seeks to denigrate all that is beautiful, all that is pure, all that is holy, all that is great, all that is excellent. It wants to bring it all down. And like, when you look at a mountain, right? Like the mountain is this, jagged structure that is like unequal and, fierce and sharp and it's not welcoming. The even the word excellent comes from the Proto-Indo-European of egg and solere, which means to climb a mountain. Like the genesis of the word excellent is to do with a mountain, which is an unforgiving and unwelcoming place. But that's what's beautiful. Whereas the communists would prefer everything just to be fucking flat forever because it's equal.
Well, and you see this if anyone who has traveled and who has spent time in formerly communist countries, you see it in the architecture. It is scarred across every city in Eastern Europe. Every large city in Eastern Europe still looks exactly the same, with brutalist, utilitarian, disgustingly awful to the eye architecture that was put up by the communists. And, under the guise of, progress and utilitarianism and we'll build yes, of course. But it's awful to look at. And then you see that interspersed with beautiful, old architecture that, with stonework and just in like something, a building that makes you feel something that you stop outside of and you just look up for a second. You just marvel at it. Like, can you believe some humans built this? Like, isn't that remarkable?
They did it over generations as well. They, the guy who started it didn't live to see the end of it. See, do you know what? That right there is right wing as fuck. Like, you see what I mean? Like, this is what I mean. Like, imagine those cultures, like the most right wing of modern cultures. You take us back. Like, if I went back 500 years, I would be considered a total fucking leftoid. Like, this is what I mean. And they were the ones who built the cathedrals and shit, not us.
Yeah.
So it makes you actually think. Like, the more we've drifted, the more ugly shit we've created. But it's obviously not entirely like as cut and dry as that. But anyway,
Sure.
it's just I find that stuff interesting sometimes.
No, I do too. And like you see, especially like to speak of Eastern Europe as well, like just because I've got Carla's a Romanian, she was born there. Parents, father was a defector from communism. Like they know it very well. Like they know it firsthand. They talk about what that experience was like, and like there's a reason that I won't say everyone who experienced communism goes far more right, because there are still a lot of people who were very comfortable in communism, and they actually liked just like and this is not me saying this is from talking to people who grew up in post-communist countries. A lot of them, I have talked to more than I can possibly imagine. They liked it because they didn't have to think too much.
Yeah,
they didn't have to try too hard. It was just, wasn't it just easier when the party decided? And yeah, maybe not everything was great, but it made sense. And then there's the people like Carla's father, who rejected that and said, no, I'm getting out of here, even if it costs me my life. And those people are the ones that go on to build things. Those people are the ones who were trapped by that parasitic system of communism and needed to get out.
They were the extremists. They were the
Yeah.
1%. They were the true excellent who didn't want to be the average. 100%, man. Like I mean, my parents came from same sort of thing, Eastern European bloc, all this kind of shit. And I go back and I speak with like so my mum was one of the ones that got out because she had this kind of drive, whereas her family stayed there, and her family are the ones who reminisce about the good old days when it was under communism and all this sort of stuff. And like I remember having this conversation with them, like because I hadn't been back to Macedonia for like 30 years practically, and just hearing this, and this was like a couple years back when I was like ultra like libertarian and shit like this, and I was like, fuck, my ears hurt. Like, what am I listening to? What's wrong with you fucking people? Um, but it dawned on me that they were happy being average, and that's why like um, I mean that perfectly ties in what we said earlier, is that like, the true right wing is like it's a much smaller percentage, and that smaller percentage of people have always been, that's the remnant for you. That is the tip of the spear, right? Like, and you do need the rest of the spear, right? But you need like a small, sharp elite at the tip. And the biggest problem I have with egalitarianism and democracy and all this sort of stuff is it pretends like the tip of the spear doesn't need to exist. So you just have a stick, and it's like, well, fuck, I need a spear. Like, I need to stab someone. Like, we're going to war. We can't do it with sticks. And it's like, no, it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a painful couple of years, man.
Well, that's the thing. I do feel that there's a tide shift happening. I feel that like people are not as, let's say, not as afraid. Like, okay, let me say it this way. That there's a shift when a guy like Mark Zuckerberg is suddenly like trying to be, based king
Cool.
out here.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
where he's no longer like, licking the balls of the surveillance state. He's like, actually, that was pretty bad, and I didn't really agree with it. And now I'm cool, guys. Look at my hair. I wear gold chains on the outside of my shirt, man. I'm like, how
He's
you
a
do,
wigger.
fellow kids? Yeah. But like that's a vibe shift right there. And that's just like one little microcosm of the vibe shift.